you had said something about how we probably agree on more on voting rights than I think that we do. And so I'd like to see what that is. My question to you is the goal when it comes to voting to allow as much of a country's citizenry to vote as possible? Is that a good goal?
For me, that's a no. I think an informed population is better than lottie-dottie everybody.
So, okay, so you think that there should be some sort of exam or something to, like, how
Well,
does one
I like to
qualify to
play
vote
with.
then?
I like I like to play with different concepts. Whether that be introducing an increase in age, right, or increase or implementing a civics test, right, something along those metrics, something that is freely accessible to every citizen that'll qualify them, because I don't see voting as a right. I see it as a privilege, and seeing as how only 65% of the eligible voters only participate in presidential elections, 45% participate in midterms, and it gets less than that as we go into like special elections.
So, okay, those seem to be two conflicting ideas because you're saying that you're saying that our that it's bad that we have a low voter turnout. Are you saying it's bad we have a low voter turnout? Did I understand that
Well,
correctly?
I'm saying that, seeing as how only 65% of eligible voters even show up or pay attention or participate, it seems to me that they don't really care. And I think when it comes to people voting and understanding the issues and the construction of government and implementation of policies, executive orders, legislation, I think it would be better to have an informed populace making these decisions on who gets into what office. I don't even care if that looks bad on whatever political side of the aisle that.
All right. Um, I don't agree
Still
with
can't
that.
hear you.
Uh,
That's fine.
I don't agree with that, and so Nick, we might have trouble finding that common ground. But I think I would, if Mike is okay with it, I would take that as a starting point for the two of us.
Okay, we can start from there
Yeah.
then. I think actually, based off your statement, Mike, I think a fair question is you had mentioned raising the age of voter eligibility. Is 18 the right age for the right to vote? Obviously, Mike says one thing. I'd love to get if Steve thinks it should be lower, higher, the same. What does everyone agree with there? And we can go from there. Mike, I will give you the first question since it is based off your opening statement. As previously discussed, Mike, you will get 2 minutes to answer the question. I will do a hard cutoff at 2 minutes. From there, Steve, you will get 1 minute reply. And then, Mike, if you want to reply to Steve's reply, we will continuously lower the amount on both sides. So 3, 2, 1, it's all you.
Yes. Well, when it comes to raising the voter age, I think each office has its prerequisites for running or participating in each election, whether it be a House of Representatives, the Senate, the President. President's got to be candidate for president has to be 35. The House of Representative, I believe, 25. Senate, 28, maybe. Correct me if I'm wrong on the ages, but I think they've set those ages there for a reason. Our founders, right? Because they seem to think that anybody who was beneath that age did not fit the qualifications or was not experienced enough. I think that's why we have those prerequisites.
So, and Kelly, please correct this if it's not true. I don't think those ages were set by our founders. I think those ages were set later on. And, you know, those are not set in stone. Those are laws that can potentially be amended. Now, that said, what we're discussing is is the minimum age to vote. We're not discussing the minimum age to run for a particular office. That's an entirely different situation that gets into, is there a maximum age that people should be allowed or should be disbarred from office? Now, that said, when it comes to minimum age for voting, I don't understand why we would raise it when it seems as though the people in our society who are currently studying civics tend to be from 16 to 22 years old. The people who are older than that tend to not study currently as much. I don't advocate for lowering it to 16. I would understand the idea for that. I definitely don't advocate raising it. The premise that someone would be able to serve in the military and not
Steve,
vote.
that is the 1 minute of allotted time on your end. Mike, is there any response you would like to add on to that?
So as far as as far as the conflicting, as far as like representation, voting for someone to represent you, the age being 25, why should somebody in a lower age be able to determine how do we know that that person's experienced enough to determine that the 25-year-old is qualified if they themselves are not qualified to run for office in the first place?
And Steve, if you want 10 seconds to respond, I can give you that, but then we'll move on to the next question.
I don't think the vast majority of people who are voting for president are qualified to run for president, and being qualified to run for an office does not make you qualified to vote for an office.
Yeah. Am I allowed to respond?
One quick line. Yeah, I'll give you a quick line.
I would agree with you, right? I think that's a common ground that we can have, right? And that reinforces my idea of some type of civics test being implemented.
So the next question, based off that discussion, and it has been, since we talked about the minimum age running for office versus voting for office, we've heard a lot of talk about a maximum age of running for office. Should there be a maximum age to vote because you will not be as affected in the long term as someone younger? I will have this one start with Steve. You have 2 minutes starting now.
I don't need the full 2 minutes. I don't think there should be a maximum age to vote. Even though people will not be as affected in the long term, they will be affected in the short term. If you look at what's been happening in New York in the last 6 months and the amazing changes, the drop in crime rate, the affordability changing in the most expensive city in the country, people can be affected in a very short term by an election. And so my goal is that every citizen should be allowed to vote no matter who they are.
And then Mike, you have 1 minute to respond starting now.
As far as max allowable age to vote, I would agree.
Look at us. We keep finding common ground. And then Kelly, if you want to chime in, yeah.
Yeah, and just before we move on from here, just a couple of fact checks in terms of like the age to run for Senate. It is 30. Mike, I believe you said a different number. And Steve, when talking about where these limits for age were set, it was done in the Constitutional Congress, and it was ratified in the Constitution in 1789. So those are my only notes for now, folks.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kelly. I think a next area that would be a good spot to move on to would be around gerrymandering, because we've seen it around the country recently. What are your stances regarding the current state level gerrymandering wars versus a more fair, independent redistricting commissions that several states have? And Mike, I will let you start off with 2 minutes.
Well, gerrymandering has a historical precedence in this country. Unfortunately, it was based on race. Now it's based on party lines, and I think it's been substantiated or solidified through the Supreme Court, if I'm not mistaken. You could fact check me, Kelly. So I would say redistricting would have to be a case by case basis as we see it happening now.
So then I'll jump in. I assume Mike's done.
Yes, go ahead.
So gerrymandering is still being based on race. You absolutely see it throughout the South. The people who have redistricted the maps in Louisiana and Alabama specifically said that they did so because of race. And I am against gerrymandering at all. Redistricting should be based on the census. Congressional districts are currently, I believe, around 760,000 people per district, or less if a state has less than that, such as Vermont and Wyoming. But we should do what we can to make those maps fair, whether it's race, economics, or simply geography. And the Democrats tried to get rid of gerrymandering, and 100% of the people who voted against it were Republicans.
Mike, your opportunity to respond.
Now, I guess I would just have a clarifying question, and I'll cede 15 seconds of my rebuttal time. How did Democrats try to get rid of gerrymandering when they were gerrymandering themselves?
Well, not all Democrats are the same person. And so the Democrats in, I believe it was Congress, proposed a law that would make state-by-state gerrymandering illegal. And it was unprecedented to gerrymander in the middle of a census before very recently, and Republicans voted against that. They tried to outlaw gerrymandering completely.
I think this is a conversation that can continue going, so I don't need to ask another question. If we want to go back and forth, try to keep it 30 seconds each, but allow each side to continue going back and forth.
Okay, Mike, it's your turn then.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the law. Oh, sorry about that. I'm not familiar with the law that the Democrats tried to pass. Was it in the House or the Senate?
I believe it was in the House, but Kelly can double check that, and I believe that they tried to pass it multiple times, and it was voted down by Republicans every time. Statewide gerrymandering done by a non-independent commission was very rare until recently. And while gerrymandering only does, counting up to 2024, gerrymandering mathematically only gave Republicans 2 extra seats by polemics. It gave Republicans 8 extra seats by geography. But it was always done based on a census and not middle of the term. Are you against the idea of gerrymandering in the middle of the census?
Cases that well, I think I would need to self-admittedly do more research on that aspect as far as how far we're into the middle of the census, or whether we pass the census, and how often each census is.
Every 10 years.
That's on my plate for me.
Yeah, census is every 10 years.
Every 10
the most
years.
recent,
and when was the
most
last,
recent one was 2020. It was during the pandemic that it was taken. So we are just past the halfway point of a census.
4 years shy. Okay. Yeah, I would ask, what are your thoughts? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, if you have a question, Mike, I'd be willing to field some questions from our 2 debaters as well if they want to have a back and forth.
Well, I have a question.
Well, Mike did bring up a question first that he was going to ask. So, Steve, I have to give Mike the floor.
I would just ask, as far as the case in Texas, I believe that went into the judicial arena. How do you feel about the case?
I don't think the judicial arena should be controlling this. I think that this is something that should be done by an independent commission. I don't think this should be polemic at all. Mm-hmm. And my question to you, and especially the idea that if someone thinks that Texas was fair and Virginia wasn't, when the people of Virginia actually voted on theirs, and the people of California actually voted on theirs. My question to you is, if you don't know how Congress apportions these sort of things and when censuses are, do you realize that by your own logic, you have taken away your own right to vote?
No, not necessarily, because I understand the premise that you're trying to make. I thought it would be 10 years. I just didn't want to make the assertion without being completely sure. But when it comes to people voting for a specific metric, could that voting populace be wrong?
Wrong according to who? I mean, we are a democratic republic, and therefore majority votes, and majority thus wins. The idea of allowing the minority to decide what is best for the majority is the antithesis of democracy.
Yeah, but what you're describing is not a democratic republic. What you just described was a direct democracy, which is not what we are.
Could you explain the difference to me?
Representative democracy is what we're described as, where we appoint elected representatives to carry out our will. What you're describing is the will of the people vote on all metrics of operations of government.
No, I did not say all metrics. The will of the people, they don't vote on which highway we allocate money toward. That sort of thing would be untenable. What I am saying is that we are a democratic republic, which is a version of a direct democracy. The same way that a rectangle, a square is a rectangle, but not all rectangles are squares. And thus, we should be able to vote for ballot measures. We should be able to vote for representatives. And that is what I'm advocating for.
And
So
Mike,
as far as voting for
I'll give you a
ballot
second
measures,
to. Oh, sorry. No, Mike, go ahead.
So voting for ballot measures is one thing, but we're not even a version of a direct democracy. A direct democracy definitionally is where the people vote on all metrics of government. We are a representative democracy. We have certain democratic principles instilled by our Constitution to carry out by the will of the people through the electoral process of electing representatives, who then piece out legislation.
Okay, but you're the one that used the words direct democracy and then said that we're not. I said democratic republic, which is what we are, and I will not accept I will not accept no for an answer on that. The United States is a democratic republic, which is a form of democracy, and thus we directly elect our democratic representatives, and we directly vote for ballot measures.
And I'm going to let Kelly real quick. Are there any fact checks? Because you are both correct, I will say, in your statements. But Kelly, are there any other fact checks as we continue this conversation?
Yeah, just a few things from a minute or so ago. Just some notes on what we were talking about in regards to gerrymandering. The Supreme Court did uphold that partisan gerrymandering cannot be blocked or struck down. There was also a more recent racial gerrymandering decision made in April in a 6-3 decision. In terms of what Steve was talking about, the times that Congress, specifically Democrats in Congress, have tried to pass laws legally, limiting what states can do in terms of redistricting themselves. Most recently, the Democrats tried to pass it in the House in 2021, and it was voted down on a near party line that didn't go through. And then the following year, they tried to do the Freedom to Vote John Lewis Act, which did pass the House, but was shut down in the Senate on a 52-48 vote because Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema voted with the rest of the Republicans. And on the most recent point, the United States is a constitutional federal republic and a representative democracy.
Perfect. And Mike, I know I believe I'm now being cognizant of myself too, because I usually chime in for fact checks after Steve talks. I will make sure to be cognizant of that in the future. Mike, is there any other thoughts you wanted to have based on the previous discussion?
Yeah, it's mainly what I was getting at, Steve, is there's a confliction in what you were saying as far as the term versus the description of it. And that was all I was talking about.
Nick, that's you.
Okay, I wasn't sure if anyone wanted to respond. I think the next question we can go into, which was asked, which is a hot button topic that we've seen. I know the person who had asked had leaned it one way, but as I've seen both sides make accusations, but we've seen a lot of claims around inconsistencies, stolen elections, anything along those lines. And we've seen them since, I think 2020 was the biggest time period we've seen stolen election claims, but we've seen them up in 2024. We've seen them recently in California. I would like to get a conversation going around the claims of stolen elections. And Steve, I apologize, I don't remember who I got allowed to go first. Mike, it might be your turn to go first. If you want to start talking about claims of stolen elections in America, do they benefit the conversation without having hard evidence coming through the judicial process?
Whether the party that loses or wins, there's always going to be claims of, something was rigged, something happened, something went wrong. But I'm on the side of evidence. And when it comes to the evidentiary process flowing through the court systems, I have yet to see a plausible evidentiary explanation.
So based on that, my question to you is, I believe the last count was 61-0 when it came to evidentiary claims. Trump lost 61 cases in 2020 about the election allegedly being stolen. When you see something like that, do you start to doubt his honesty when it comes to elections?
No, he's hard-headed. So
wait,
Trump, yeah. So I mean, he's hard-headed. He's he says a lot of. Am I allowed to swear on here?
Sure.
He says a lot of stupid shit, right? And I think beating this into the ground, this is just beating a dead horse. I think when it comes, if there was going to be evidence that was going to be presented, it would have been presented in 2021.
I don't think it's beating a dead horse, because I think it is compromising the entire system and people's faith in elections. It is a point that they are still making. It is a point that they are trying to make about California right now, as if a Republican stood a chance at winning the mayor of Los Angeles mathematically. And to call this sort of thing into question undermines the very foundation of our democracy. And I know that you're saying he says a lot of shit. I don't think going to court 60 plus times is saying a lot of shit. I think that is a much more extreme thing than talking. It is abusing the legal system.
Well, the legal system is there for a reason. It's there so you can challenge. There's no real limit on what you can do. As far as the irregularities that are going on in California, I have my own thoughts, though I can't prove them. Right? I have my own opinions on the California election. I don't think it takes, more than one day to count all the votes. I don't think that is necessary when it comes to elections. I think all the votes should be counted day one. anything that comes afterwards, it's too late.
So
I think when the loss of confidence comes with extending that time period for counting votes.
while I do think that the California system can certainly be overhauled, I don't think disenfranchising someone who's serving in the military because it takes so long to send mail from overseas is the right move. And that's part of what happens with provisional ballots. That's part of what happens with late ballots. California has allowed mail-in ballots, I believe, since 1962, and it is nothing new that it takes a long time for them to count. That is not an irregularity. That is a regularity. If your problem is with the system in California, that's different than claiming that there are irregularities, because the thing that's going on this year is exactly what has happened in every California election since mail-in ballots became easy to obtain.
Just because something is happening doesn't mean it's always necessarily correct. As far as military voting, the men and women of our military are supposed to be apolitical when in uniform to begin with. I think they have a higher calling than worrying about who their home state of record is representing them. Me personally, I don't think military members should be voting.
Wow. Okay, because politics affects the military so much. It affects them being sent overseas in the first place. It affects the amount of protection that they get. It affects their mental health services afterward. The idea that you want to disenfranchise the entire military is wild to me. That is not an argument I've ever heard anybody make. And also, I do want to double down on the point that questioning whether or not a system can be or should be fixed is different than saying that it's fraud or rigged or irregular.
Okay, so we saw, for example, I'll get to the military thing in a minute. We saw, for example, there were, I think it was the day after we saw, or the night of, we saw 24,000 votes dropped. I think he made a video about it, and they were mailed in, and none of them counted for the Republican candidate. And I believe you had something to say as far as like Republicans, going really hard against mail-in ballots.
That wasn't.
And
that wasn't me. I did not make that video because that never happened. What actually did happen was counts get released at different times, and the DOJ investigated this. There was no time whatsoever, and we can go to Kelly with the fact check, but there was no time whatsoever where there was a ballot drop in California or in Los Angeles where a Republican got absolutely nothing. That simply did not happen. The video that I made, I think you're confusing it with something else. The video that I made was that Republicans for years have been railing for 10 years now, have been railing against mail-in ballots. And despite Trump voting with a mail-in ballot, he keeps saying that they're not secure. He keeps saying that they're responsible for voter fraud, even though we do not have any proof of that whatsoever. And so the idea that the majority of mail-in ballots are going to go Democratic, obviously they are. Also, and so that was the video. But also the idea that the majority of mail-in ballots will go Democratic in a state that votes heavily Democratic, in a city in that state that votes heavily Democratic, is logic, not an irregularity.
Yeah,